What's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And yes, as the name of the video suggests, today we are not talking about Outriders, but rather looking at an upcoming game called Biomutant, which is coming out on the 25th of this month, so basically 10 days from now. And I'm quite excited for this game, and I think that they're doing a bunch of things right in this game, and I wanted to focus on 3 of them in today's video and give you a little bit more background about them, if possible, and basically just discuss some of the things that I like that I've seen so far, and maybe elaborate a little bit on why I'm excited for this game. So, let's go. So firstly, Biomutant is being developed by a studio called Experiment 101, which is mostly comprised of ex-Just Cause developers. So that's essentially the lineage that you're dealing with. Now, I am a pretty big Just Cause franchise fan, and I've spent many hours on that franchise over the years. And when this game originally showed up in 2017 in videos and things like that, that's already when it sort of caught my eye. Now, of course, at that stage, not a lot was known about the game, but where we are now, 10 days essentially from the launch, there's been a lot of, information, a lot of things that have been shared, and that's, of course, some of the things that we're going to be looking at in this video. Now, just a quick disclaimer, I've not played any demos of this. I've not seen any, additional footage or anything like that other than what's available out there on YouTube. So, of course, my opinion is based off of having looked at that, but also reading the Biomutant wiki and all of that. So I haven't seen a preview build or played a demo or anything like that, and so I just wanted to say that basically my opinion is solely based on the same information, I guess, that we are all essentially privy to. Now, the first thing that kind of has me really interested is, of course, the character creation. Now, this has been shown by a couple of different sites, and we kind of have an idea of what we're looking at here. So essentially, your character has a sex and a breed and everything like that, which you choose at the start. Now, the breed, of course, determines your stat distribution with the 6 core stats that your character has. And as you level up, you're, of course, able to increase these core stats and add additional points into them. But basically, these core stats, they determine the strength of your character in certain areas. So whether you are, more able to deal melee damage, more able to deal range damage. And then, of course, there's also ability or skill-based damage in this game as well, with things like psychic attacks and, elemental attacks and that sort of thing. So, of course, your stat distribution affects the combat, effectiveness of your character in those, 3 different areas, and you can most likely opt for something that's kind of like a little bit good at each one, or you can go into a heavy brawler kind of breed that's really good at melee, but not so good at, abilities, for instance, or something like that. So I really like this. I mean, there's also body type and height and, all of these things which are fully customizable. And then further on in the game itself, you can mutate and you can have robotic limbs and all these sorts of things. So the character creation is extremely robust and just so, laced with opportunities and differences for, creating something unique to what you want, which I really enjoy. I like the idea that you can build something that is kind of like unique to what you would want your character to look like. And the aesthetic of the game is really cool to me, which is like this weird kind of Jack and Daxter kind of furry creature kind of thing. But then, when you add in the robotic limbs and the mutations and stuff like that, it goes off in just like its own direction. So definitely, I like the character creation, what I've seen so far, and it definitely seems that you'd be able to create something unique. And, after spending many hours with this game, you'll end up with something that is, essentially, just unique to what you've built, and not so much being able to be compared to something else that's someone else. Even though I'm sure that the game will have, let's say, certain archetypes or meta or whatever you want to call it, where you'll know that you'll have to have these kinds of stats if you want to have like a spellcastery kind of character, or you'll have to have these kinds of stats if you want to have like a brawler, like a melee class. But in any case, that's the first thing, and that's the character creation. The second part, and we could probably spend a whole bunch of time looking at this, but is basically the crafting system. Now, the crafting system in this game looks to be extremely customizable and essentially works off the basis that as a character, you roam this open world and you pick up scrap and pieces and things like that. And you can use those and repurpose them into completely new weapons or new pieces of gear. Or you can use that to upgrade existing pieces of gear, existing weapons that you have, for instance. Now, there's a huge amount of variety that you can apply. If we just look at the armor, for instance, armor itself on your character, you have 7 equipable slots, and each one of these slots, except for I believe its head and chest, can be further modified by snapping add-ons and things onto it. Now, just looking at the armor, for instance, you also have different rarities of armor, which is the overall quality of your piece of gear, based off of the material that it's comprised of and how much protection and abilities and things like that it offers, as well as the add-ons that you have snapped onto that. Now, obviously, this is once again just looking at the footage that we've seen there, but it just really seems that even just looking at the armor, and we're not even talking about the weapons yet, that you again have such a huge amount of possibilities for things that you can essentially create. Now, does that mean that everybody's stuff will be, different and each character will be unique when it comes to how they've used the crafting system to build their character? No, probably not. Because again, like you see in games like this, and this is the thing that I like, is after people play it, they start realizing that these things go well together, and this gives you really good protection overall, or this makes you really good against melee class or these kinds of enemies. This is really good for ranged. This is really good for areas where you're taking a lot of, radiation damage and, that sort of thing. So I really like the fact that there's going to be this entire, what it looks like to be at least, there's going to be this entire kind of like situation where people have, you're looking and trying to figure out, what goes with what. And also because you can combine all these different things, there's a little bit of discovery in that as well, where you figure out like, okay, wait a minute, if I use these two things together, then I'm able to, for instance, resist lightning damage, and also, heal myself whenever I hit something, or, something like that. So I really like that. I like the depth that comes from this. And again, like I said, that was just focusing on the armor. When we get to the weapons also, you have different classes of weapons. So this game has obviously melee combat and it has range combat. And then, like I said, it has abilities. So let's put abilities to the side right now. When we look at melee and ranged, melee is a little bit more straightforward because I guess, melee is melee. Even though in the game, again, you have single-hand melee weapons, you have dual-wielding weapons, which can be unlocked via talents and things like that. When we look at the ranged options, you, of course, have one-hand, double-hand options. You have fully automatic options. You have single-fire options. And again, here, looking at what we've been able to see from the crafting system and some of the videos that are available online, you can hot swap these items on the fly and essentially create a gun that shoots freezing bullets and that heals you from the damage and all of that. And you can, again, I keep using this freezing and and healing combination, but that's mostly what we've been able to see. But it's really cool that you are able to basically create the weapon that you want, right? And when you then go into combat, you carry one melee option and one ranged option, and then you have your abilities, and you're able to kind of use these all on the fly. A lot of the reviews that I've, or not reviews really, but sorry, previews for this game that I've seen have compared the combat to Devil May Cry, which is essentially like a game where you're meleeing and then you're jumping back and you're shooting and then you're throwing an ability and all of that. So it kind of rings true, and it definitely looks like that from the footage that we've seen. And that's really cool. Again, that means that the combat is open to interpretation to how you want to play. So in other words, if you want to, just brawl it in the whole time with swords and everything like that, then you can probably back those up with skills that work with that. And again, from the footage that we've seen, it definitely seems that's an option. But I think that the real depth and the real sort of combat finesse that's going to come in here is when you're able to string all of these together, like meleeing something, then using an ability, then jumping backwards, going into slow-mo, shooting a bunch of stuff with a machine gun, throwing a grenade, all of that. So again, just just a lot of options here. Your weapons are fully customizable, of course, but then there are also uniques, which have very powerful effects of their own, but then cannot be modified. So these are kind of like old school legendaries, I suppose, or something like that. And yeah, it's just, I mean, literally in one of the pieces of footage, you can see the player taking a walking cane and then adding a safe door to it and then putting some scissors on that, and that essentially becomes like a weapon that they can use in melee. So really interesting. A lot of options there. I think a lot of experimentation that you can do there, and a lot of hours that you can spend trying to find a weapon that works for you, whether you want to go ranged and snipe stuff, or whether you want to brawl it up with a baseball bat with stuff stuck on it, or anything like that. So really, really interesting, and again, just something that I think has a lot of depth in it and already, kind of excites me. The last part, or the third thing that we can look at, and this kind of like encompasses the first two categories together into one big point, and that is that this game just seems to have a lot of variety. And this variety is all over. So, I mean, I know that variety is a very, strange way of describing this, but it's just that this is a game that essentially plays like Zelda or Immortals Phoenix Rising or any of the Assassin's Creeds, where you have this big open world and you have quests and a story that you have to play into that, but you also, as you explore, you find things as you go off the beaten track, you get into combat, you have these little pockets of activity and everything like that. And although not a lot of detail about that is available yet, it definitely seems that you have a very broad range of biomes, from icy to stuff that is covered in radioactive waste, to jungly kind of stuff, to mountainous territory, to underground, to exploring inside tunnels and all this sort of thing. And the studio have revealed that it's essentially an 8x8 kilometer world, so that's certainly a huge amount of space for them to stick stuff into. Now, how busy that's going to make the world, so that it's just chalk and block full of lots of stuff to do, or if you're gonna have large big open areas that's essentially just for riding across quickly with a mount or something like that, I guess that remains to be seen. But speaking about mounts, again, the variety comes in here. The sheer amount of just mount or travel options that have been shown in the demo is ridiculous, from things like boats and mechs and scooters and bikes, and that's just the shit that you can build. Then there's living things like bats that you can fly, and things that look like horses that you can ride, and everything. So again, just from a traversal perspective, so many options, so much variety, and yeah, it just looks like this game has so many things going on for it, and really means that you can actually lose yourself in this, and it's probably going to be one of those that's just going to eat up a bunch of your time. And I think I'm due for one of these again. If we look at some of the games that we've recently played, and the games as a service and that sort of stuff, it kind of tends to be a lot more linear and focused, and not like this open world thing so much. And most recently, I played through Immortals Phoenix Rising for the first time, and I really, really enjoyed this again after having taken a break from these open world kind of games like the Assassin's Creeds, for instance, all of them. So it kind of seems like this is more like this, but it's in a completely, new kind of world, this post-apocalyptic setting where, animals have essentially taken over again, and there's these mutations and all of that. And yeah, there's a dynamic weather system, and it switches between day and night. And, the story, the way that the story is told is that there's this kind of like, if you've watched some of the videos, and definitely check them out, I think IGN and GameSpot have done excellent previews that you can essentially see a lot of the things that I've been talking about today in this video as well. But there's this, narrator that narrates everything that you do, and it's really cool. It's kind of funny, where it's like almost like a third party that is explaining to you everything that's happening with your character, which is of course also a different approach than the usual. But that's it basically. I didn't want to make like a super long video, but I am excited for this game. I hope if you didn't know about it, if you weren't excited about it, maybe this has given you some reason to check into it. It's coming out at a great time, right? Where there's not like a lot of other things going on, to be honest. Yes, we did have a new season in Destiny 2 just now. And of course, there is still, Outriders is still an ongoing thing. I'm not going to completely walk away from Outriders. But there is kind of like a little bit of a drought right now when it comes to games. So it's really launching at a fantastic time for you to be able to consume something like this and just dump like a whole bunch of hours into it. In terms of dumping a whole bunch of hours into it, of course, it's not really clear yet how long this game will be and if it'll be a 50, a 60, a 35, 100-hour experience or something like that. But it definitely does seem that there's a lot going on here. And so I think that it's going to be a wild ride, and it's probably going to be something, interesting and something memorable. At least I hope so. But that's it for Biomutant. Like I said, it comes out on the 25th, so it's 10 days from the recording of this video. I hope to see you in that game, and more than that, I hope that you're having a fantastic weekend. I want you to have a great morning, a great afternoon, and a great evening wherever you are. And until next time, fucking cheers.